This is such an honor to be introducing Reb Irwin, who for very many of you needs no introduction, but for some of you may not be the person that you hang out with in your regular spiritual life. He's been with Ner Shalom since 2008. He's a founder and faculty member of the Taproot Community, offering Jewish activists a path for deepening in Jewish practice. He's an LGBTQI rights activist and authored Chicago's gay rights law, which has been in force since 1989. He was a founder and for 21 years, a performer with the Kinsey Sicks, America's favorite Dragapella Beautyshop Quartet. Stay tuned for upcoming performances in the Bay Area. He was ordained by the ALEPH Alliance for Jewish Renewal in the lineage of Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi, and he blogs at Itzhak's Well. We're always delighted to hear what he has to say, to share his teachings, and I hope we will have sufficient yawns behind us so that we can really enjoy and seek in and soak in to what he has to offer tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you all for being awake this late. It is sort of getting into the dreamy time. So do what you need. And if you get dozy, see what comes to you, see what learning or what insight or revelation comes to you in that liminal space between awake and asleep. Maybe we'll start with just a little nigun. dee da da dee da ya da da ya da 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 da. Take a nice breath. Take a nice breath. Get yourself comfortable. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about dreams, and specifically about how knowing comes to us through our dreams, prophecy in our dreams, as our ancestors, as the sages understood it, but also how we understand it. So for background, let me remind you that Torah, at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, the very end that we read at Simchat Torah, tells us that when Moshe died, there never arose another prophet like him who spoke to God face to face. Torah then tells the story of many other prophets who heard God's voice directly and sometimes were given missions on behalf of the divine. Those are all of our prophetic books. Then Talmud tells us that after the time of the last prophets, after Haggai and Zechariah and Malachi, the divine spirit of prophetic revelation departed from the people of Israel. Instead, a bat kol, a divine voice, remained to speak words of inspiration and insight into our ears. And if you come to Ner Shalom tomorrow at 11, besides getting cheesecake, you can hear more about the bat kol, which will be what I'll be teaching about. But alongside the direct prophecy of Moshe, of Moses, and of the prophets, and alongside the indirect prophecy of the bat kol, all along we see examples of and a belief in the prophetic qualities and prophetic potential of dreams. So one question for us to hold tonight is, what dreams are prophetic? How do we interpret them? What is the nature of the prophecy or the revelation that comes to us in dreams? Are our dreams prophetic in a predictive sense? Or is the nature of dream prophecy something else? Are our dreams a place where we can, with our defenses down, return more gently into the divine unity that Suji described just now in her psychedelic session? In our dreams, are we tapping into the Ein Sof, into the infinite source of wisdom, into some collective source of wisdom, and returning maybe not with a message and not with a mission, but we return saturated with that soup of divine wisdom and oneness? Maybe all we return from our prophetic dreams with is that sense of connectedness with the source. So that's not to say that dreams cannot be explicitly predictive. I have had I have had a number of memorable predictive dreams in my life. In 2007, I dreamt that my mother would have a stroke and I would be driving her to an emergency room with her sitting next to me in the passenger seat. And 6 years later, that's exactly what happened. I didn't remember the dream at all until just a couple of years ago, when I was doing COVID lockdown cleaning, and I pulled out a dream journal that I had kept, and I saw that dream, and I was shocked to see it. So was the dream predictive, or was it just an anxiety dream, and the fact that real life mimicked it a coincidence? My friend Oren Perlman, who pays a lot of attention to dreams, suggested that maybe the dream wasn't meant to be exactly predictive, but that by having it, I was on some level readier for that moment when it happened. Who knows what other dreams I have had that prepared me for eventualities that did not in fact come true, or that did come true even though I don't remember the dreams. Might the prophetic quality of a dream not be about the prediction, but about drawing wisdom or competence or strength from the source? So let's start out tonight I put a link to the handout in the chat, although maybe I should put some of these on the screen, share the screen. Is it okay if I share screen? And then it'll show up in the recording. Let's see, where can I find it? Right there. Okay, are you seeing this handout with a nice Chagall painting on the top? Give me a nod if you're seeing it.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So just starting in the Chumash, in the 5 books of Moses, in the first 5 books of Torah, these are, I'm listing for you here the instances of dreams being talked about. In a couple of cases, dreams are just the idea of dreams are being talked about. But in the first chunk that are all in the book of Genesis, the dreams are retold and are described in some detail, and most of them are memorable dreams. There are a couple of them that have a quality of direct prophecy. Someone falls asleep and God speaks something to them that could be a conversation in the waking world, if that person were open to prophecy in the waking world. So God comes to Avimelech in a dream. This is after Abraham said about Sarah, she's my sister. God says to Avimelech, no, she's not his sister, she's his wife. And then where is it? There's another instance of this. Oh yeah, in Genesis 31, God comes to Laban in a dream and tells him not to harm Jacob. So those are 2 instances where there's just a conversation happening that we wouldn't have been surprised if the same things happened with Abraham or Isaac or Jacob with direct speech. But here they happen to come through dreams. But the other ones are the famous dreams. In Genesis 28, Jacob dreams, puts his head on a rock, and he dreams of a ladder stretching to heaven, and angels are ascending and descending with God poised at the top. In Genesis 37, Joseph dreams of his brother's sheaves of wheat bowing to his sheaf of wheat. And then he has another dream on the same theme, with the sun, moon, and stars bowing to him. In Genesis 41, Pharaoh dreams. In Genesis 40, Joseph's fellow prisoners have dreams, which he tells them and they interpret, which they tell him and he interprets. In Genesis 41, Pharaoh has a pair of dreams, the 7 skinny cows eating the 7 fat cows, and then 7 skinny stalks of grain devouring 7 fat ones. And Pharaoh has to seek someone out to interpret the dreams. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment, as soon as I remember how one stops the share. Right there. And just ask, just from those alone, what do we learn from those stories about prophecy and dreams according to Torah? I invite you to unmute and just speak. Dorothy?
That you can know more in your dreams than you do when you're awake.
There's knowledge that comes to you. There's information somehow that comes to you in your dreams.
Yeah.
That Joseph or Pharaoh was not going to be able to get in waking life. What else?
That dreams are a metaphor for what was going on around you. See, I'm seeing the dreams as a metaphor for what was going on, that they weren't actually happening as dreams, they were descriptions.
Right, these were images that were metaphorical, they were symbolic.
Yeah.
Like
that's what I was saying. Thank you for articulating.
Yeah. So Pharaoh doesn't, the fulfillment of Pharaoh's dream is not 7 skinny cows eating 7 fat cows. Right? So we know that the dream, even if it's predictive, is not happening in a way that sort of gives an exposition of here's what's going to happen. It speaks it in metaphorical language and symbolic language, in the language of dreams, which incorporates the imagery that we live with, the imagery that's within us. it makes me think about what Maimonides, what Rambam, when Rambam is talking about the metaphors in Torah, the symbolism in Torah around God. It says that, none of those metaphors are true. And then he asks the question, so why is Torah written that way? And gives the answer, because that's human language. That's how humans understand things. So it's Torah speaking through a human kind of filter, a human kind of lens. And similarly, right, what is the language of dreams speaks somehow in our symbolic language and not in our textual language, not in our linguistic language. I want to share something this distinction between word-based prophecy and sort of symbolic image-based prophecy that we get in dreams can be mapped onto gender and also onto the development of alphabetic writing systems, in contrast to hieroglyphic or image-based writing systems. This is something that's been written about, and most recently, Rabbi Jill Hammer writes in her book, Under Torah, an Earth-Based Kabbalah of Dreams. She writes this, and it's really wonderful. She writes, this shift in the preferred medium of prophetic transmission, as recorded in the Bible, that is the preference for direct prophecy over dream revelation, is consistent with a larger historical development occurring throughout the Near East and the Levant. In his book, The Alphabet versus the Goddess, Leonard Schlein explores how the shift to alphabetic writing moves cultures toward text and away from images as a primary source of wisdom. This shift, Schlein believes, coincided with a devaluing of the feminine, and specifically a devaluing of the image of the goddess. This shift away from the image is the same shift that moves the biblical authors toward textual prophecy and away from dreams. The Zohar itself hints at something like this, saying, quote, prophecy in the world is male, but the dream in the world is female, end quote. Returning to the dream means returning to image, to the indeterminate, to the non-linear, and to voices that have been suppressed or marginalized. If canonical revelation in Jewish tradition, which comes from above to below, is called Torah, we might call the dream world under Torah, a deep well of truth that lies hidden and bubbles up from beneath, shifting our notions of divinity and prophecy. So I love this idea here that in dreams, as opposed to sort of the Moses-like or Isaiah-like prophecy, where you have information, a voice coming from above in some way, as we imagine it. Instead, we tap into a deep well of truth in our dreams, and we emerge each time with something different. So we're going to take a little time and look at what different rabbis of the Talmud had to say about dreams, how they understood the dreams, and also understanding that when we look at Talmud, we're looking at their thinking and their imagining, but they're not free of agenda, right? The rabbis of the Talmud have an investment in their own authority as the source of halakha, the source of wisdom and law in Judaism. And so when somebody wakes up from a dream and says, I have a prophecy that we should do X, Y, or Z, there is a cultural desire among the rabbis of Talmud to suppress that. And yet they are also aware that there is a truthiness to it, that people have this experience, and you can't tell people that it's nothing. And so we'll look at how they sort of hold dreams as being meaningful but tricky, meaningful but in need of interpretation. So I'm going to share my screen again. and we'll roll to the next page and look at some of these texts. Is there someone that would read us this first one in English?
Sure, I'll do that.
Go ahead.
With regard to the verse, I will hide my face in that day from Deuteronomy, Rabbi said that the Holy One, blessed be, said, even though I hide my face from them and my divine presence is not revealed, nevertheless, I speak with him in a dream, from Numbers
12:6, and this is taken from the tractate Chagiga. Yeah, so this is just the rabbis identifying in a way the tension that God in Deuteronomy says, I hide my face. You can't see me. I'm going to be elusive. We're going to play hide and seek with each other. But elsewhere in Numbers, and that's I give you the full quote somewhere, I think, where God is talking to Miriam and Aaron, praising the fact that Moses gets his prophecy so directly, so face to face with God. God says, other people I give prophecy by speaking to them in a dream. So that's this quote. So this is the rabbis sort of trying to harmonize the idea of God's purposeful elusiveness, the purposeful veils, but also that God does speak in dreams. Whoever, I couldn't see who that was who was reading, but could you go on and read the next one?
Sure. Rav Hizda said, a dream not interpreted is like a letter not read. As long as it's not interpreted, it cannot be fulfilled. The interpretation of a dream creates its meanings. That's from Torah quote 55.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, this is a very famous phrase. Chelma de la mefashar keigarta de la mikaria. That dream not interpreted is like a letter not read, which is interesting, right? The letter not read has no effect. It doesn't have effect until you open it. You open the letter and it's an invitation to lunch, or it tells you that you've inherited 1,000,000 shekels or whatever. It can't happen until it's opened. And the dream itself is like a closed envelope. So that's, again, thinking about the rabbis and their investment, that you don't just wake up from your dreams and you say, this is so. The rabbis say, no, the dream is not the letter. The dream is the closed letter. The open letter is a dream that's interpreted. And then they give instructions for how you go about interpreting, that you interpret it with other people. You don't sit and stew with it yourself. You spend time with other people and interpret it. This also has the suggestion that how the dream is interpreted has effect in the real world, which you could see on one hand as meaning something like the dream, if to the extent that the dream has a predictive quality, the thing that comes true is based on what you interpret the dream to mean. That's one way of reading that. The other way of reading that might be something like, however I interpret the dream is going to affect my actions. So whatever unfolds in the future after this dream is going to be based on how I interpret the dream. Inevitably, how I interpret the dream. So if I interpret it one way, it might affect my actions and set off a cascade of cause and effect, a cascade of ripples. But if I interpret it in a different way, then it's a different set of ripples, and you don't know where they'll take you. So more cautions about dream fulfillment. Is there someone else that would like to read this next piece? Rabbi Berechia?
I can read.
Go ahead.
Rabbi Berechia said, even though part of a dream is fulfilled, not all of it is fulfilled. From where do we derive this? from the story of Joseph's dream, as it is written. And he said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me. Genesis 37:9. And at that time, his mother was no longer alive. According to the interpretation of the dream, the moon symbolizes Joseph's mother. Even this dream that was ultimately fulfilled contained an element that was not fulfilled. From the
Keep
same
going.
source, yes,
Yeah, keep
Rabbi
going.
Levi said, one should always anticipate fulfillment of a good dream up to 22 years after the dream. From where do we derive this? From Joseph, who was 17 when he had his dream and was 39 when his brothers bowed down to him in Egypt. From Berachot.
Yeah. So any reactions to this? What are the rabbis saying about dreams, and is it something you find to be true? And if you want to say something, just unmute and speak, because I can't see you.
There must be some kind of a special dream, because we all have dreams that are just dreams that are due to anxiety and so on. They have really, they don't have any reason that you would go to the problem or the trouble to interpret them. What dreams are special dreams that we would do that with?
Right. How do we know? And I was kind of asking this question of Suji in the last session. Like, how do we know what is the dream that is prophetic, and what is the dream? I remember once that I took out the garbage at night, and then I went to sleep, and I dreamt that I took out the garbage, and I woke up from this dream laughing, because it was just, in a certain way, it was like felt like such a silly waste of dream space. And so what is it that tips us off that something is a special dream? Or what are the chances that something that we're not perceiving as a special dream is, in fact? Neshama?
I would, my intuition says that the invitation about the 22 years is that we're being invited to pay attention to this inner space in our consciousness that could perhaps hold a key to something to come. And it is not necessarily our job to dismiss it, nor is it our job to cling to it as if it is true prophecy that is destined to become true, but to ground us in the possibility of things that might come and to make us even more closely aware of our present.
That's very beautiful, Neshama. Right, if God tells you to go prophesy to the people of Nineveh, like, there isn't a way around it. And you can even get on a ship and try to go to the other way, and it won't work. But the dream, what comes to you in the dream, doesn't necessarily, according to Reb Neshama, doesn't necessarily require you to do something specific, but it opens you up to some possibility that you might not have been open to before. Something might be taking root that will only fruit later.
Reb Irwin,
Yep.
this is Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
I have a very profound dream life and I realize there are different categories, like what you're talking about. Sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, I took the garbage out. Sometimes they're about, I need help from my sister or my mother who have passed, and they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm here to take care of you. And so I ask for that, and they do come. Sometimes once I had a dream that I jumped out of an airplane over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I didn't have a parachute, and I had to figure out how to land so I didn't die. And I remember the journey down to the ocean, and I woke up and I was alive. And so I think there's different, and then I think there are so many different ways to dream. And if you pay attention to your dreams, you'll learn a lot about yourself. And sometimes they come from your consciousness, and sometimes they come from your unconsciousness.
How did you go about interpreting your falling from the sky dream, for instance? Not necessarily what was your interpretation, but how did you go about holding that dream?
I felt like what happens when you, metaphorically, what happens when you jump out of a plane. And I had heard people say that you have to go in the water straight with your feet straight down, because if you try to dive, you'll break your back. So that was how I kind of steered myself. And so there was this very important intention of not dying when I hit the ocean. And then I woke up when I hit the ocean. So I think it was there's an intention, and I'm not afraid of my dreams. I listen to them. I think they're very important messages that connect me to the world and the people that are in my world. So, and some people say, oh, I don't dream. And I learned that if you, like in the middle of the night, I'll have a piece of paper. And if I just remember one thing about the dream, then I'll write it down. And then in the morning, I might remember it. And the more that you remember, the more you remember.
Thank you. Cliff?
Yeah, I am not that prolific a dreamer, but I did have a dream once that I was lying in my grave, looking up at my two daughters who were just crying, watching their father be buried at an early age. That was when I was a very large person, and I didn't remember that dream. I immediately forgot it until about, I don't know, 6 or 8 months later, when I had lost weight and I remembered the dream. Eventually, I went on to lose over 150 pounds, but but it was a motivation. And in the Talmud, it talks about a bad dream is a good dream because it motivates, and a good dream may not, because it's only goodness, and the dream itself is enough.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in Masechet Brachot, in Tractate Brachot, it explores this and says the thing that you wake up from and think of as a bad dream is something to motivate you, that motivates you to make a change, and so you have to consider it a good dream. Steve, hi.
Hi. I'm just thinking about all the dreams I have that I don't remember, or I don't note in the morning. And I'm thinking of the passage, God was in this place and I did not know. And I'm thinking, how much is, I think probably everyone here in this right now, spend some time thinking about their daytime hours. Is that a moment? Was that something that happened to me at this point in my life where God was revealing, being revealed in a way? But it's a lot more work now. I feel like we've got to go pay more attention to the nighttime too.
Robin has her hand up, but after Robin shares, I want to look at a couple of chunks of Talmud here that give some indication of how you know if a dream is one that you need to pay attention to. Robin.
Oh, yeah, I have had a series of what I call light dreams. The light is beyond blinding, and it comes in the forms of being in a spaceship, a garden, and other things like that, which informed me right away. I didn't take a lot of interpretative time with it, that there was something bigger and lighter and wonderful that could happen. And these were all in times of great difficulty. So they sort of steered me through those times.
Yeah. Thank you. Stephanie, something quick. Oh, I'm seeing Stephanie, something quick. And then I don't want to miss the chance to look at these texts.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention what Diane Bloomfield had said to us in Jerusalem just recently, which was surprised me. I'd never heard it before, that when you come to an interpretation during your dream, then you've really reached the truth.
Right, and we're going to look at that text right now.
Oh, okay.
So Stephanie, since you're unmuted, let me pull this back up and pull us to this next passage. But let's look at these top three ones. Can you read us the first one, Stephanie?
Yeah. Rabbi Yohanan said, one who awakens in the morning and a specific verse of Torah happens into their mouth, it is a minor prophecy and an indication that the content of the verse will be fulfilled.
Okay, so that's one of the first ways they're saying, okay, pay attention to this dream. You wake up and you're saying Hine Matov. Saying, okay, if a psalm comes out of you in the moment that you wake up, then there's a reason for it. Read us the next one, Stephanie.
Rabbi Yohanan also said, 3 kinds of dreams come true. A dream of the morning, a dream that one's fellow dreamed about them, and a dream that is interpreted within a dream. And some also say that a dream that is repeated several times also comes true fulfilled, as it is stated. And for that, Pharaoh's dream was doubled.
Okay, yeah, because Pharaoh had 2 dreams. He had the cow dream and the whatever the plant was that ate the skinny plant eating which the rabbis then say it's really the same dream. And so then it becomes, in their understanding, it becomes a recurring dream for Pharaoh, as opposed to 2 different dreams for Pharaoh. So, okay, so here's a hint. They're saying, here are the dreams to pay attention to. A dream that someone else dreamt about you. I don't know what to do with that exactly. Every once in a while, you get a phone call from someone out of the blue and they say, I just wanted to see how you were doing. And they had a dream that you died. And you don't have to ask, that that's what's underneath it. A dream that's repeated several times. I had a recurring dream over years that ultimately led me to, where my family's graves were. And I can tell you that story sometime, but had I not had this dream over and over for years, I never would have found it. Dream of the morning. So a dream of the morning, it's in Aramaic or in Hebrew here, it's calling it Shalom shel shacharit, like a dream that happens at dawn. So there's something in there, I think, about that liminal space where your sleep, you're no longer in the heavy sleep. There's even maybe the beginning of conscious awareness creeping in. But you're in a state that's very open. You're in a state that's very unguarded. And I find that to be the most interesting of these, in that I think it describes the condition that you might be in, the condition you might be in when you're most open to some kind of deep knowing within yourself. Whether or not it's a message from outside, the thing that that you suppress in your waking life, that might be the moment when you notice it and feel it because your defenses are down. So, but frankly, those are also most often the dreams we remember too, right? The dreams we remember are the ones we wake up with and that we reach for our pens and record quickly before all the images of it disappear. And Stephanie, if you're still unmuted, why don't you read this last one? A very famous piece of Talmud from Masechet Brachot.
There are 5 matters in our world which are 1/60th of their most extreme manifestations. They are fire, honey, Shabbat, sleep, and a dream. Our fire is 1/60th of the fire of Gehenna. Honey is
the fire of hell, right? The fire of hell, hellfire.
Okay. Honey is one.
Sorry, my typo.
Honey is 1. Oh, okay. Is 1/60th of manna. Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. Sleep is 1/60th of death. And a dream is 1/60th of prophecy.
So this is a very famous bit. Chalom echad mishishim lanevua. A dream is 1/60th prophecy. So I think I joked in the title of this workshop. I think I called it 1 minute and 60. 1 minute and 60, right? That if you're working on a 60-minute clock, the implication, one possible implication, is that you get a minute of prophecy every hour, which means that if you get a good night's sleep, you might get 8 minutes of prophecy, which really is not bad. I say 8 minutes of prophecy a day, that's remarkable. But of course, we don't experience it that way. There's no instruction set given here about how to know which 8 minutes, other than what we just read, those hints that we just read. But maybe they mean something else. They're not talking about a proportion on a clock. If you were in Suji's session in the last hour about psychedelics, she was talking about the concept of bitul in Jewish mysticism, of dissolution of the dissolution of the ego. And we read a little piece where of Talmud that was about the 1/60th proportion. 1/60th is the amount under which something doesn't exist conceptually. So the example in the passage that Suji read is that if you have a meat soup and you accidentally spill a drop of milk into the meat soup, does it make the soup trafe? Does it trafe up the soup? And the answer, according to Talmud, is not if the volume of soup outnumbers the volume of the drop of milk 60-1 or more. So 1/60th is the amount, is the point of nullification. It's the point at which something ceases to exist. But on the other hand, coming from the other direction, it's where something begins to exist. Right? The 1/60th, if it's under that, it's as if, Talmud says, it's as if it doesn't exist at all. But it's the threshold of existence direction. Suggestion here is that the prophecy in our dreams, it's almost not even there. And yet it is there, because they could have said, there is no actual prophecy in dreams. They could have said, voices speak to us in our dreams and try to convince us that they are prophecy, but they're not. They could have done that. They could have found 100 ways to say, there is nothing of prophecy in your dreams, but instead they say 1/60th, which is, it's small, but it's not nothing. It's not nothing. So the question then becomes, is it that there's a chunk that is prophetic in some way? Or is it like a low-grade prophecy? It's prophecy that is almost not prophecy at all, but it's just the beginning of prophecy, and we rub up against it in our sleep, and we come away with a kind of reshimu, as we say in Aramaic, a kind of impression of it. We don't come away with words like, go prophesy to the people of Nineveh, but we do wake up with an impression, with a reshimu, which is often the sensation I have when I wake up from a dream. By the time I've opened my eyes and reached for my pen, the plot is gone. But I still feel something. There's something in me that I feel. I'm still marked by the dream in some way. Stephanie.
I was just going to say that it could be that one out of 60 dreams is prophetic.
Right, you could read it as 1 out of 60 dreams. I mean, there are a variety of ways you could read this. Either way, the rabbis are saying you can't just believe all your dreams and take them as prophetic, but they're also not saying that there's nothing to it at all. They're just, they're being vague about how to understand it. So if we think about our dreams as a kind of sinking into the Ein Sof, a kind of return to the infinite in the way that a psychedelic journey might be, then what is it that we are, when we emerge from that pool, from that mikveh, from that soup, what is still on us and what does it mean? Shoshana?
Yeah, I think there's just so much wisdom in that 1/60th. I mean, I kind of, it's my livelihood of interpreting dreams, my living. And, what Jung would say is, and many people would say is, the unconscious speaks, but it's not in a way that the conscious mind can really take literally. And you can see that people will often take their dreams literally. Like, I need to go out and, buy an elephant because I had a dream that I had an elephant pet or whatever. I mean, it's wisdom, I think, to tell us that 1/60th of what we receive, that we have to be discerning, I guess. We have to discern what is the 1/60th that's to listen to. And that's, it takes a lot of discernment to.
I agree, and I thank you. And I also think that what you're saying and the conversations we've been having are starting from the premise that prophecy is in the nature of message. What if prophecy is not in the nature of message, but is in the nature somehow of dveikut, of connection with the divine, connection with the source in some way? When the divine talks in your ear, when the divine says, go to Nineveh, we read about it in Torah, and it's just a conversation between two characters in a story. But if we actually experienced it, what would that feel like? What would be the immensity, the magnitude of that experience? And compared to that, the gentle way we redraw close to the divine in our dreams might be what they're referring to, that we're having this experience that's drawing close. We're not touching, we're not getting a download of information, but we're somehow drawing close to the source, and it awakens things, it opens things, it opens channels. And then when we wake up, we separate back out again, and we're left with maybe some hints, some impressions, but it's not in the nature of speech, not in the nature of text or direct interaction with a divine being. Rabbi George.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Irwin. I'm going to offer another, it's all part of a continuum. So Maimonides, great medieval philosopher, his concept of prophecy was that it was like always happening, but most of us couldn't see it. We're in the dark. And like the prophets could see prophecy, like you could see lightning in the sky, but the truly awake person was in the light all the time. And then, in the Buddhist framework, really this separateness is an illusion. So mostly, actually, we are there, we just don't know it. And so that's another way of looking at it, that we get a glimpse of it when we dream sometimes. But actually, if we were truly awake, it would be prophetic. It wouldn't be revelation, because there would be no I. Mm. So I forget the Hasidic Rebbe who looked at his hand and said, is this hand not the hand of the Holy One? Blessed be God. Like, do you know that song? There's a song that goes, and that's another way of looking at it. That's from the opposite end. It's not.
What is this aliveness I feel? Is it not the Blessed Holy One?
Right, there you go. So that's the flip side of it. It's not 1/60th. It's actually the other way. It's 100%. We can only just handle, because of our I-ness, the magnitude of being one with the one.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Thank you. That's gorgeous. Yeah. The predicament of being embodied creatures, of being embodied beings, and living through this separation. I want us to close up with the invitation that I have one more thing I want to share, and I'm going to take a couple more minutes, since just a couple more. But an invitation for us to notice our dreams, and an invitation to invite dreams. I think it's entirely fair to go to sleep and to get into bed and say, I would like to dream about, and see what works. But I invite dreams all the time. Please, I want whatever revelation I'm ready for, whatever would serve the greatest good by my receiving. Please, not something too scary. And I put limitations on it. And sometimes when I'm going through a period where my dreams are very alive and I wake up feeling unrested, sometimes I'll say, I need a night off. I ask for my guides and my guardians, my guides and my angels to be the bouncers at the door, and really don't let anything in unless it's really important for me to know it tonight. I want to share, this is also from Talmud, from Brachot, and it exists in both in a different form in both the Jerusalem Talmud and in the Babylonian Talmud, and I've included both in the handout. But it's a prayer for what happens when you wake up with a dream and you don't know what to make of it, but it's troubling you. What do you do with that? You're worried, you have a feeling that maybe it means something, and you can't, and you're not able to interpret it, but so you don't know if you can let it go or not, if you're supposed to let it go or not. So there's a dream, there's a prayer that's offered. And I've seen this prayer, and the idea is that you offer this prayer at the same moment that the high priests are offering the priestly blessing, so that by the time you're done quietly offering this prayer, the whole congregation says Amen to the priest, but they're also amening your prayer. And I think it's done that way because you don't necessarily want people to know that you woke up with a bad dream. You don't want people to speculate what you're feeling guilty about, or what you're plotting or what you're worried about. I've seen this prayer painted on the walls, calligraphed on the walls of the old synagogue in Tykocin, Poland. And I realized not only is it that you want to be able to offer it without people knowing, that also means that you don't want to be going through the pages of your book to find this prayer. So you look up from your book and you read it off the wall quietly, and then you get the Amen from the congregation. I find this prayer to be very, very useful in all situations where I feel like there's something going on, there's something happening, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to handle it. It has a beautiful quality of surrender to it. I'd like to share it with you and offer it to you for your use. Ribono shel olam, ani shelcha v'chalomotai shelcha, chalom chalamti ve'eini yodea mahu, בין שחלמתי אני לעצמי ובין שחלמו לי חבריי ובין שחלמתי על אחרים. אם טובים הם, חזקם ואמצם כחלומותיו של יוסף, ואם צריכים רפואה, רפאם כממרה על ידי משה רבנו, וכמרים מצרעתה, וכחזקיה מחוליו, וכמי יריחו על ידי אלישע. וכשם שהפכת כללת בלעם הרשע לברכה, כן הפוך כל חלומותיי עליי לטובה. Master of the universe, I am yours, and my dreams are yours. I dreamed a dream, and I do not know what it is. Whether I have dreamed of myself, or whether my friends have dreamed of me, or whether I have dreamed of others, if the dreams are good, strengthen them and reinforce them like the dreams of Joseph. And if the dreams require healing, heal them like the bitter waters of Marah by Moshe, our teacher, and like Miriam from her leprosy, and like Hezekiah from his illness, and like the bitter waters of Jericho by Elisha. And just as you transformed the curse of Balaam the wicked into a blessing, so transform all my dreams for me for the best. So I want to leave you